Hello, this is a response or reaction video to Shoe0nHead's latest video. It's about the organization Prostasia. In that video, Shoe sets out to expose that organization. Now, what is Prostasia and what's this all about? Well, this relates to MAPS, basically, minor attracted people. Now, what is Prostasia? So according to Prostasia's About page, they are this new kind of a child protection organization that they try to minimize, reduce sexual harm against children. They argue that's their goal. Now, Shoe0nHead disagrees that that's really their agenda. Shoe thinks that they have a completely different agenda that's in no way related to what they actually say in the About page. I think I'm going to mention this recent controversy here just because this is sort of related. This is not something Shoe0nHead touches on in her video because she posted her video before this whole controversy, but there's this incident that has been all over the news about this professor of sociology from this particular university that gave an interview to Prostasia, and essentially in that interview he made a bunch of comments, and some of these comments have sparked this kind of an outrage. Like, people are very, very angry about his statements. Well, what are his statements? I think the best way you get a picture of what he argues is to just look at the interview. It's on the Prostasia YouTube page, so I think I suggest you actually listening to the whole interview. But briefly, like, one of his points is that he doesn't think just being attracted to kids is immoral. In his opinion, it's immoral to actually act on that attraction and cause victims, to cause harm to those around. Well, that's basically the horrible comment that caused this outrage. And by the way, I just recently found out that this person was actually put on leave. So I knew there were a bunch of people who were trying to get this guy fired because of his statements, but I didn't know that they kind of succeeded here. So that's kind of funny, because these same people, these conservatives, are usually so against the cancel culture, but now when someone has a differing opinion than they have, they are okay with it suddenly. So I don't know how that works, but anyway. So I'm going to conclude this introduction by just pointing out where I think the biggest disagreement are between me and Shoe0nHead when it comes to MAPS. I think part of the solution to prevent sexual offenses against children is to try to reach out to pedophiles, to create this kind of a society where they feel less apprehension to talk about their sexuality, to disclose their sexuality to a mental health professional or just a family member or a friend in order to get a safety net. Shoe, on the other hand, these are her exact words, I believe. She wants pedophiles to be sort of away from society, but, well, it's going to be a society that's going to help these individuals. So excluding them from society, driving them underground, it's not at all conducive to this thinking that we should help them. Okay? I think this is a sort of a very brief way to summarize where our disagreements are. So basically, she wants to segregate them, and my opinion is that we kind of have to integrate pedophiles. Now, if you believe I have misparaphrased Shoe's position here, I haven't done that on purpose. It's only because I haven't heard her voice out any kind of precise plan or give out any kind of solution what we should do with this problem, like how we should address this population that has this attraction to younger people. So that's out of the way. Now I think that's enough an introduction. I think we are ready now to look at Shoe's video and play some clips, okay?
Now, before we get started, everything I'm going to say here is alleged. I'm not making any statements. This is based off of things on the website. This is based off of things I have read with my own two eyes. So if you have an issue, take it up with my lawyer.
So that's Shoe0nHead pretty much saying that my sources suck. You probably shouldn't take anything seriously I say in this video. I mean, that's just sort of that's sort of what it sounds like to me, this disclaimer she made. But anyway, we can in fact take a look at her sources, because I have a few things I wanna show you. So this is Shoe's first source. It's an article titled "Prostasia's goal is to normalize pedophilia." Sounds very objective. Now, this is a fourth wave feminist publication, so I let that sink in. It's not the second wave of feminism or the third wave of feminism. It's the fucking fourth wave of feminism. So you can kind of see why there might be an agenda here. This writer of this article is Anna Slach. She's a radical feminist, basically. That's why she writes a bunch of articles to this publication. Now I'm going to read out just 2 excerpts from this source to just sort of demonstrate why I think this might not be the most reliable source. The organization's efforts, she's talking about Prostasia, have dedicated themselves to crusades against child pornography bans, letter-writing campaigns to state representatives demanding childlikeness sex dolls be kept legal, and funding research into fantasy sexual outlets for pedophiles. So you get the picture that the Prostasia is supposedly against bans on child pornography. But when you click on the link, it's obvious that Prostasia is talking about fictional material. So Prostasia is not against bans on real child porn, as Anna Slach implies here. They are against bans on the fictional material. So that's kind of an important distinction that Slach just doesn't bother to mention here, and instead implies something else. So yeah, not very objective, not very thorough, not very good journalism, I would say. And here's another one. This is what Slach also writes. In an attempt to give itself legitimacy, Prostasia employs a wide variety of pseudoscientific jargon and quack references which they utilize as justification for their positions, but in almost no cases do these assertions find themselves very widely shared amongst academics or experts, which do not have a relationship with pro-pedophilia movements or statements. So, can you see what Slach is doing here? She's essentially dismissing any expert or academic who would agree with Prostasia by saying they have a relationship with pro-pedophilia movements or statements. In that way, this whole paragraph makes no sense. It's completely nonsensical because she just arbitrarily decides that, well, if there is an authority or expert that doesn't agree with Prostasia, that's meaningful. But when it's the other way around, when the expert decides to agree with Prostasia, that can be dismissed. But how about Shoe's second source? Maybe that's a little bit better. So let's move there. Oh, never mind. That's a bummer. It doesn't exist. So it's a shame. Let's move on. So besides Prostasia, this is the last source Shoe lists. Okay, so it's a blog by none other than the same fucking feminist, Anna Slach. So those are basically the only text she has as a source besides Prostasia. 2 texts. One of them is blog, one of them is article, and they're both by the same fourth wave feminist. Like, the irony here is, of course, that she is known to have criticized feminism, and now she places so much trust on these feminist sources now. So it's kind of bizarre, but whatever. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I'm going to read out one excerpt from this source, basically to show that this isn't really better than the first one. So this is what Anna writes. One of Prostasia's current counter-crusades is stopping the attempts to include artistic depictions of child sex exploitation as child pornography. Another towards ending the sweeping global movements to ban child representative sex dolls. The laws are unconstitutional, misguided, and immoral, their website reads, encouraging users to write into their congressmen with prefabricated letters calling the dolls a victimless outlet for pedophiles to express their sexual desires for children. While Prostasia's site asserts their claims are research-based, studies have consistently found that these dolls provide no therapeutic benefit and in fact may serve to desensitize pedophiles due to the lack of negative feedback. Sounds pretty bad for maps, but when you click on the link, this is what you get. It's not studies in plural. It's not even one study. There's a distinction between a study that has like material, subjects, and a method, and an academic comment. This is an example of just academic comments, just basically discussing the arguments for and against child sex dolls. For example, this is what they write about the therapeutic benefit of these dolls. They basically summarize the arguments for and against them by these 2 sides, because there are academics who don't think they're a problem, and others who disagree. So they don't cite any studies here. They present no data of their own. It's a complete fabrication to imply that firstly there have been studies conducted that focus on this, or that these studies have found that these dolls have no therapeutic benefit. Absolutely no such studies exist. So it's a lie by Anna Sludge. Well done. It's just spreading misinformation. So these were pretty much Shoe0nHead's sources on this. Make of them what you want. I will now continue this actual response to her. So Shoe0nHead, make your silly comments.
So Prostasia believes the best way to prevent child abuse, the solution to pedophilia, is acceptance and normalization. Now, I personally believe there are several different solutions to pedophilia. 9mm, 20mm, 40mm. I'm just kidding.
Wow, such an original joke. No one has ever suggested shooting pedophiles. Fuck.
If this was a website, if this was an organization actually dedicated to like helping these people get therapy, helping them get set up with real therapists, I wouldn't care. That would be great. That is what we want. Like, we want these people, like, you know, sort of away from society. We want them away from children and getting help. But this ain't that.
So this is the point where I and Shoe fundamentally disagree. Like, she also thinks that help for pedophiles is a good thing, but when, for example, Prostasia is trying to get rid of the most excessive stigma, to in effect make it more feasible for pedophiles to disclose, you know, such an intimate, such a sensitive part about themselves, their pedophilia, she complains. She thinks that that's normalization of pedophilia. Well, if normalization just means that we basically shift the blame from accusing all pedophiles, just generalizing them all, to actually recognizing that the real problem, in the sense that the real like moral problem, is those who act on it. Well, if that's normalization, well, we should do a bit more normalization, I guess. Like, that's literally what helps them. That's our way to help them get help. Because we know from surveys that, like, number one reason why a pedophile hasn't sought help is because they fear they will be further stigmatized. So yes, and trying to get them away from society is completely counterproductive when, like, considering that it's going to be society that's going to help these individuals. Like, they are not going to be helped if they are driven underground. Like, yeah, they may end up in some kind of a dark web pedophile communities, and that's not really what we want, because, you know, these are places where these individuals have become very rebellious against society, where they will rebel against society's norms. And, like, it's almost understandable why they would do that, because we have this kind of a idea that pedophiles are not included in society. They are some kind of an outside threat, like terrorist or something. So when we basically reject them in this categorical manner, well, we're just going to make them bitter. Do we want to make a bunch of pedophiles bitter and essentially, like, through stigmatization, increase their mental health issues, or, like, what's the word? Basically, emphasize that problem they have? Because we know that's going to be the effect of stigmatization. Their mental health issues, they will worsen. Do we want a bunch of pedophiles like that on the streets? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to have a bunch of pedophiles who rebel against our society's norms just because of people like Shoe, who are so obsessed with this idea that we have to condemn them for no more than a thought crime. And I think that's fucking sick as a liberal. That's just my opinion. This is why I disagree with Shoe, and I don't like her too much.
You see, Prostasia is not recognized by the US government as a child protection organization. There are no professional therapists involved with this whatsoever. Professionals who work in child protective services have completely dismissed them, and childwelfare.gov does not list them anywhere in their thousands and thousands of child protective organizations.
Yeah, but Shoe, if Prostasia is such an illegitimate actor, okay, why do they have a charitable status given by the government? Isn't that exactly what you will complain about next? Hell, let's play the clip. It's next anyway.
But despite all of that, it's literally tax exempted. It is a tax exempted pedophile club. So it's a church. Just kidding. My Catholic family is not going to like that.
So Prostasia is tax exempt, but I'll explain why that works against your position. I'm going to read out something. For many, charitable status is a legitimizing factor taken into consideration when choosing what organization or foundation to donate to. Government recognition that an entity's work is valid enough to exempt them from taxes is often a good indicator of the work's importance. The California-based organization Prostasia was given IRS tax exemption in 2018. Guess where I read that from? I read that from your own source by Anna Sludge. So essentially, the fact that Prostasia is tax exempt works against your point here, because it means it has a charitable status given by the government, which means that government has recognized Prostasia. And if you're going to argue something like, well, the government has made a mistake here, it shouldn't be tax exempt, because I think that's what you are implying here, then you are just, that just means that you are cherry picking when it matters, that an organization recognizes Prostasia and when it doesn't matter, in which case you can just fucking dismiss that. Isn't that kinda the same thing as Anna Sludge did while she was making this implication that, well, if an expert agrees with Prostasia, that can be dismissed as a person with a relationship with pro-pedophilia statements or organizations. And when experts don't agree with Prostasia, that's what's meaningful. You guys are just cherry picking when it matters to you that these organizations or experts agree with Prostasia, because of your little agenda. Is what it's all about.
In July 2019, PayPal ceased its relationship with Prostasia because it apparently violated policy on transactions involving, encouraging, promoting, facilitating, or instructing others to engage in illegal activity.
Shoe seems to live in this idealistic utopia where no channel on YouTube, for example, has ever been falsely flagged down by trolls. That has never happened. Like, no act of censorship by these big-ass corporations is ever unjust. Of course they can be unjust, and it's because of this literally proves nothing.
Prostasia tries really hard to roleplay as this, like, hip, modern, inclusive organization. But at the end of the day, they're just another NAMBLA.
This is such a retarded argument. Like, how many videos has this person made about maps? And it still escapes her that there's a distinction between map organizations that think it's okay to have sex with children and map organizations that disagree, that are against child-adult sex, like versus pedophiles. Even if you say that Prostasia is a pedophile organization for the sake of the argument, well, they still fundamentally differ from NAMBLA, because they don't think it's okay to rape children. I mean, how stupid can you be to make this kind of a comparison, and how stupid are her viewers to actually like these kinds of videos? I mean, before YouTube made the dislike button not public, I think that's a stupid decision. But before that, there was like 700 dislikes and 69,000 likes. To not even appreciate that fundamental distinction in the ideology of these organizations. I mean, that's so fucking dumb that I should already like stop her video, don't respond to any of that shit, because it's so fucking baffling how clueless this person is. Like, she continues to be just as this clueless. Like, usually, like, when you research a topic, you get a bit smarter, you get a more like insight onto that. But she seems to like stay the same. What the fuck?
An advisor to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection had to say this about Prostasia.
Are there any Prostasia campaigns that don't undermine online child protection? They claim to be a child protection org, but it's hard to find an issue where they err on the side of actual child protection. Prostasia doesn't have a victim focus, full stop.
And guess what this advisor is referring to? You can see that in the screen cap. Again, they're talking about fictional child porn and child sex dolls. So apparently because Prostasia doesn't believe in persecuting people for a thought crime, that must mean they don't have victim focus. I mean, yeah, they don't have imaginary victim focus. Why the hell would they?
The goals of Prostasia is very clearly to protect the feelings of grown-ass adults. That is their top priority.
What I think Shoe fails to grasp here is that the feelings of these grown-ass adults, they are not at all unrelated to this objective to prevent sexual abuse against children. Like, for example, if a pedophile is receiving therapy, they may focus on trying to improve the pedophile's self-esteem. Because if we have a pedophile who feels they are completely worthless and who feels that their choices are meaningless, well, that kind of a pedophile is obviously at an increased risk to offend, and we don't want that. And I'm going to use an example which Shoe0nHead, probably as an anti-pedo, should have no hard time appreciating and grasping. So the pedophile attraction itself, that's a feeling inside the head of the pedophile. I'm sure Shoe would recognize the significance of this feeling as a component in many instances of child molestation. She wouldn't just dismiss the feeling of the grown-ass adult then. Like, I would argue there are other factors involved, not just the attraction to children. There are these kind of a counter forces, you could even argue. Like, if a pedophile doesn't want to harm children, usually people don't want to harm children. So they could understand that, yes, if they follow their attractions and act on it, that the likely result is that the child is harmed. And if they recognize, they understand intellectually that, and they have the feeling that they don't want to harm children, well, there's a protective element, very strong protective element, I would argue. So the psychology of pedophiles, it's not at all unrelated to this goal of preventing harm against children. And if Prostasia is doing something like trying to preserve the self-esteem of the pedophile, trying to essentially prevent these pedophiles from falling into that kind of a dangerous mindset that you, Shoe0nHead, is advocating. Like, there's no distinction between pedophiles who act on it and who don't. Like, if Prostasia is trying to prevent that mindset from basically building around that pedophile's psychology, well, yes, they're actually, by helping the pedophile, they're actually protecting children through that kind of a mechanism. That's exactly what therapy for pedophiles is. You wouldn't say that therapy for pedophiles is meaningless because it focuses on the feelings of the grown-ass adults. No, you would understand that it's kind of part of the solution to address those feelings.
But another battle they are fighting is for the legalization of child sex dolls. Recently, some mother had to fight to get a doll removed from being sold because it was based on her 8-year-old daughter.
Right, but that's really not an argument against child sex dolls specifically. It's an argument against sex dolls generally. And there's an easy solution to that. You don't need to categorically ban child sex dolls or adult sex dolls to prevent that. You just ban the type of sex doll that's based on real people. That's how you solve the problem.
And another focus of theirs, and I'm not joking, is to abolish the sex offender registry. Now, why would Prostasia want to abolish the sex offender registry? The Council of Ghouls consists of convicted sex offender Guy Hamilton Smith. And they also had convicted sex offender Jeff White on board for a while. So I think we figured out why they want to get rid of the sex offender registry.
Well, I don't know. Maybe because it doesn't work. Like, according to this research, the net effect of public sex offender register in the USA that's based on the Megan's Law seems to be like 0. It doesn't prevent sexual crimes against children. What this means is that while the register could have some positive effects, like it makes parents more vigilant, it also has these downsides, like it's more difficult for people on the list to integrate back to society. So these pros and cons basically cancel each other out. And that's why the net effect appears to be 0, that it doesn't prevent sex crimes while and yet it's extremely expensive. That's like having a medicine that's extremely expensive, okay? But it doesn't cure anything. It also doesn't kill the patient. but it doesn't cure anything. It doesn't make the patient feel any better. Now, would you purchase this medicine? Would you invest in that kind of a medicine that's ineffective? No, you probably wouldn't. So there are real arguments against the sex offender register of the USA. So you don't have to do this character assassination thing all the time.
By the way, when a family lawyer called into question Jeff White's sketchy history of, child diddling, the family lawyer received threats from Jeremy Malcolm, the founder, that basically said, "You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. Capiche?" And after that, they apparently stopped disclosing who works for them. They stopped disclosing the staff, the volunteers. It's just it's a big mystery now.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a huge loss to people like you who do like to do this character assassination bullshit. Like I mentioned, I mean, who cares who works for the organization? They make arguments. They present theories. Why not just critically analyze those theories and points they make? Why do this character assassination bullshit? Like I don't get it. So about this whole thing that Malcolm had threatened someone, like this family lawyer, there's a context here. And first off, it has got nothing to do with that person being a family lawyer. She's another radical feminist that had been exposing these kinds of ex-sex offenders that had been working for Prostasia or were working for Prostasia. So basically she was just harassing Malcolm, sabotaging his work, and trying to make Prostasia look bad, completely unprovoked, like completely unnecessarily. She was exposing these things, like she was on this campaign against Prostasia clearly. Basically were just a huge pain in the butt of Malcolm. And at some point, I guess what happened, Malcolm got tired. He was like, okay, you continue to do this shit to me constantly, incessantly. I can fight back. Like I can expose some embarrassing things about your career if you continue. Is this a threat? To an extent, I guess, but is it illegitimate? I mean, basically Malcolm is just saying, I can play the same game as you're playing. Like I can fight back. Like if someone punches you and keeps punching you and you are like, well, I'm going to punch you back if you continue your assaults. Is that a bad thing? So how is Malcolm the bad guy here? Why the different standards? Why the feminists can be on this campaign against Prostasia and Malcolm and reveal all this shit, but when Malcolm fights back, or doesn't even fight back, he just suggests that I can fight back if you continue this shit. He's the bad guy. I mean, what the hell? Okay, I think I'm going to finish this response in part 2. So I don't want to, there's still plenty of clips I want to respond to, but I don't want to make a huge video out of this. It's like unnecessarily heavy. It's just more convenient for the audience and for everyone if I do this in 2 parts. So this has been the end of the part 1. I hope I see you in the next part, okay? That's all I have. Thanks for listening.